What's up guys, it's Elliot from Urban Farm It here again. Over the coming few days we're going to be travelling all over the country, meeting different food growers and finding out what does it take and how do you start a food growing business. Today we're at the beautiful Willow Farm in Brook talking to my old mate Ed, the rebel farmer, about how he got his market garden off the ground. Ed dabbles in permaculture, no-dig gardening, microgreens, glamping, you name it, he's got it. All right, well here we are with my old mucker Ed at the gorgeous Willow Farm up in Brook on Wye. Ed is a really progressive guy. I met him maybe 2 years ago now, trading at the markets. He's come a long way and he's been really generous and he's invited us around the farm today to talk a little bit about how you start a market garden, microgreens, permaculture type business. So Ed, how's it going, mate? What have you been up to recently?
Well, yeah, we've been very busy, as you've probably seen, but things have progressed massively over the last 2 years. I think lockdown was like actually sort of a real trigger for really taking what was at the time a bit of a hobby and taking it into a business and moving forward with it. As you know, I'm very keen on education and social change, so I've been really sort of dipping my fingers in with the network locally, trying to sort of really sort of not only just sell these veggies but try and talk to people about why localized food's so important.
Yeah, well, I think that's really important because, you know, like, in order to run, a farm is a static thing, you know, it's somewhere that you care for, you love, and community also has to play a part in that because everybody needs support, whether that's finding new customers, volunteers coming in, which I know you're big on.
Yeah.
It's all really important, you know, to keep things local, keep community driven, and to just, you know, do things in the right way, really.
Yeah, well, that's the ethics around permaculture as well. Permaculture is not growing veg; it's actually an ethical design process. So it incorporates the whole community thing with the growing. So you know, and obviously the biodiversity and nature is a, you know, the big part of that ethics there. But also, the community and sort of talking to people and seeing if we can get children interested in growing veg is like one of the really sort of important things for me now. But yeah, the business is really coming forward now, and I'm getting to a point where it's supporting itself, so I can go off and do that sort of community work and sort of build on my ethics essentially. Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about community of people, but looking around, there's an impressive community of plants, animals, insects, ideas.
Yeah.
So how about we get stuck in and have a look?
Yeah, definitely. Let's go and have a look.
Oh. So we're here in your Polytunnel, and I've got to say it's probably one of the most bountiful tunnels I've ever stood in. Absolutely gorgeous. I'm knocking my heads with grapes and catching my feet with herbs. It's brilliant. For guys who run permaculture farms or no-dig farms, you know, the image of a polytunnel seems to be a staple thing.
Yeah.
When you first started out, how did you kind of go about deciding, right, now's the time to buy a polytunnel? How much roughly does it cost, and what should new beginners be looking out for when choosing one?
Okay, yeah, well, when I first started on the permaculture journey, I think I had a real, you know, sort of need for a polytunnel to start the whole thing. It was essential really, because the polytunnel gives you not only the cash crops of what you sort of see now, these beautiful tomatoes and cucumbers, peppers, which won't really grow outside in our UK climate very well. But the most important thing is that overwintering aspect of the polytunnel. It gives you this amazing abundance of greenery and income earlier in the year, in March, and it also extends that season over into sort of October, November. You can sometimes still have tomatoes in here. When I first started, it was really an experiment in here, though. You know, it was my first major investment was the polytunnel. I had an idea of the design for the whole plot at that point, but the polytunnel was the first thing that I wanted to get my head around.
The hub and the heart.
Absolutely, just growing inside and really just getting to grips with it. And permaculture, the most important aspect of it is observation. It's like taking that observation and learning from it. You're learning from nature, you're seeing what happens. So you take it step by step. You know, like I said, we just get everything up and going. We watch what comes in and destroys it, like the caterpillars from the butterflies come in and destroy your brassicas. You know, that's a lesson learned. Okay, we won't do brassicas during the summer in the polytunnel because we can't keep butterflies out of it. So that's you know, that's one of the lessons. Yeah. You know, learning how to grow tomatoes, up strings and things like that. You know, that was just learning, observation, what works well, what doesn't. Are there things in here that work well? You know, all the way through the year, like this oregano, for instance, down here. It's just been in there. It's actually still in its pot. It's one of the first things that came in here years ago.
So how many years has that been there?
That's been there since I put the tunnel up, like the first year. We put that raised bed through the middle there, and that was just in a pot when it's now rooted through the ground. It's happy here. This is similar with the grapevine. And
I mean, this is gorgeous.
This actually, you know, it was between a couple of raised beds over there, and it's rooted through the pot. And look at it today, it's still in its pot. But it's just rooted straight through it, and some things were just like, okay, they want to be there, you know, like, and other things have died and they've gone, they've moved on. A lot of things, the flowers in here, they just come back each year. The nasturtiums that are just self-seeded. So you get this after a few years of bringing in soil, compost that you've made from local waste materials, and certain seeds that will seed themselves. You just get this sort of polyculture abundance of lovely plants like this, and then you just add those nice summer fruits in there at this time of year to create this. It's pretty busy in here right now. It needs a little bit of a cut back.
Busy but beautiful. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, you know, and beauty is all a part of it, because we're trying to demonstrate, you know, how amazing, you know, food can be, and how growing it can be such a, you know, a well-being
exercise as well.
Exercise, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So,
you know, there's sunflower. I don't know how it's got in here. It's just there. You know, we got a leek going to flower here. You know, you just can't rip that out. I think
something that, you know, that you're touching on there, and it's important, is that, you know, you don't want to try and resist what nature's trying to do, and that's the essence of permaculture. You know, like you say, if a certain type of plant performs well and that wasn't on your original plan, so be it. You know, change the plan, adapt, overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're just learning, mimicking nature. We're learning from nature what wants to be here, what doesn't. You know, if we have a little wander down now, we can see, you know, we need that extra height in the middle here, so that's where the cucumbers end up living. You know, so we've got these lovely little crystal apple cucumbers this year. One of my favourites. They do really well, and they really wow the crowd. They're like, what, a round cucumber? It looks like a lemon. It tastes like a melon, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. You know, you need that sort of wow factor, and that's what, you know, these sort of plants can give you. So I look at loads of different diversity in crops. So actually looking through here, we've got a few tomatoes finally starting to ripen up. Very exciting. But
I think something that I'd love to know a bit more about as well is your companion planting with nasturtium, aren't you?
Well, yes, technically I am, but I'm almost not on purpose. They, like I say, they have self-seeded themselves. They are here because they want to be here, and they found places in the tunnel that they feel happiest. And I don't, you know, I see them come up and I let them do their thing. They know when to come up too. There's seeds in here that won't come up till the winter as well. They're just sitting there dormant at the moment. It's too hot to germinate, but in the winter they'll come up. Things like purslane and corn salad. That, you know, I let them go to seed, and they're all over the place, but they know it's the summer and they're not going to come up. At the moment, we've got the nasturtiums, we've got the calendula, which are lovely edible flowers. We've got this beautiful coriander, which ends up everywhere. This is the confetti coriander. Amaranth, this is actually a leftover from my microgreens thing, which we're going to have a look at later, but they have amazing ability to survive the composting process. And when I've mulched these beds with my microgreen waste, they've just come up, and I'm like, well, you know, take a leaf here and there, and that's going to add like some beautiful colour to your salad. So we're really just working with what's given to us rather than trying to create this thing. We're really like working with nature and letting it decide what our salads are going to look like, how beautiful this tunnel is going to be. But yeah,
something that I've noticed a lot of is particularly when you get new no-dig growers and things like that, is that there's lots of straight lines. It's very neat and tuck, and there's no mismatch. But that's not what nature's like, So if your polytunnel isn't immaculate and straight lined and crisp and clean, again, you shouldn't worry about that, because that's not how nature does it. Beneath the soil here, there's loads of root interactions going on. Bugs are shared between plants, and it's a much healthier way to do things.
That's right. So the butterflies and the bees, so insects really help with what's going on in here, and that balance between nature allows us to use natural pest protection. So we've got bugs eating bugs, basically, and that's what happens, and that's how things balance out, and we don't have to use horrible things like chemicals, So we're mulching the ground. We've got a whole no-dig method here, where we disturb the soil as least as amount as we can, and we're just continuously mulching on top. And this is keeping the biodiversity below the ground, all that habitat for overwintering insects, and it's also we're encouraging the biodiversity above the ground at the same time. So we're really we're really concentrating on above and below to try and make this system work, and it gets better each year.
Yeah, oh, gorgeous, mate. Right, well, I mean, it's 38 degrees in here. It's definitely summer, so I think we better scarper and have a look at the rest of the site.
Sounds good.
Well, you might have noticed that Ed's got an awful lot going on here, both biodiversity-wise and system-wise. So, Ed, let's try and break it down for the guys. When did you start? What did you start with? And how did we end up to where we are today?
Yeah, brilliant. Well, we started with that polytunnel. We've just been through there, and that was the first thing that I really sort of learned and got to grips with. I just had a couple of raised beds outside to start with in 2016 was the first year that I grew here, and then we moved on to learning how to grow outside, which is actually for me a bit harder, really, and it's taken a little bit of time and development in order to get to this spot there. So when I first got here, I realised that we were facing southwest here, and we got a lot of sky. It's just tilting slightly. We're on a little bit of a slant here, and that's really helps with drainage and getting the ground dry in the spring, because it's so wet and muddy and claggy clay.
And waterlogged is just as bad as bone dry.
Well, that's it. So we've got a bit of both here. That's what clay does. It's horrible in the winter because you can't drive on it, and you can't, you get stuck in the mud. And then in the summertime, as you'll probably see now, we're starting to see some cracking, but that's been reduced massively over the last few years with the techniques that I'm demonstrating here. So the idea is no dig is you create, or you bring in local waste products and create these permanent raised beds with compost. And that's what we've been doing and developing here. Using my tree surgery waste. So I've previously a tree surgeon. I did a bit of that when we first came down here to make ends meet. So I composted chippings, and we created soil from turning those chippings. I've now developed other compost systems, which I'll show you in a little while. Whoa. It's good fun. Hot composting is my new thing.
Oh God, can't wait for that. So we came along, we chose the spot, we looked at the soil, the lay of the land. You moved in, exciting times, set up the poly, started to dip your toe in outdoor growing. What came next?
Really just experimenting outside. Again, observation. Permaculture is observation, key. Just observe, and then we can move on from there. So we watch what happens, and we watch where the water pools during the winter, and we watch where it cracks during the summer, and we try to find positive solutions for those problems. And the main thing is to create that lovely compost that we've put in these rows here. And they've created these permanent raised beds. We did turn it to start with, so I sheet mulched it to start with, killed all the grass, and then we used we tried not to go too deep, but we did sort of rotivate. We tilled the first light layer there for our first year's growth, and then after that from there on we've just mulched on the top.
Well, if you try and plant straight into compact soil, you have issues like you say, drainage, oxygen, all other sorts of things. So even though traditionally with a no-dig space it is what it says on the tin, there is often a need for initially to get the biodiversity going.
Absolutely, yeah. No-dig usually starts by digging.
Ironically.
So that's how it goes. But we've got some amazing examples of where this can go on to. Like we're in this bed here is no-dig potatoes, which is something that people may not have come across. Traditionally, you dig a trench and you put a whole load of compost in the bottom of it, double digging and all this sort of thing traditionally. Absolute waste of time. We but you do need resources. We had a whole load of wet straw that came off a meadow that was sort of that had gone bad, so it was just sitting on the field, and we can use that as a big mulch in order to start our potatoes. So in here we've got potatoes. They're just starting to finish now, all these new potatoes. We've got the main crop over here, so you see the sort of yellowing of leaf now. That means that it's sort of ready to come out. We've got a little bit of blight here as well. That's very common. If we pull these up, you can see really
Beautiful.
easy to pull up.
Gorgeous.
We've got these beautiful red potatoes. Look at those. They're nearly ready to go in the oven straight like that. Don't even need a clean. So they've just been mulched with this lovely lovely material here, and that's just an old wildflower meadow from down the road. Stuff that came in, and that's just been put wet straw on top of these, and we put these on the ground, the seed potatoes on the ground. Just
lay it on the ground.
And then we covered them in the wet straw.
And they find their own way down.
And we've hardly watered them as well.
Wow.
You'd be so surprised how well it's done. We had quite a nice bit of water during the early spring, which really helped things get going.
So when did you plant these?
Yeah, that's usually from Paddy's Day onwards. You start putting in your new potatoes.
Of course.
So from so from mid-March, I'm just going to cover those back up again so they don't go green, and we'll find them in probably for lunchtime today. But yeah, that's just a lovely example of what's going on here. You can see the main crop potatoes over there. We want them to stay in the ground for as long as possible, and then we're going to put them in the store for winter. So,
what do you think if you were to say to somebody's just starting a market garden, they're just starting on their outdoor growing? What's the 5 guaranteed sellers, the ones that everybody wants at markets?
Well, that's a hard one to say. I think it depends on your market, your locality, what everyone else is doing around you. You know, that's part of the observation there, and the collaboration, the community aspect of it. There may be a farm down the road that's doing beetroot, so you don't want to grow beetroot. You know, you want to have a look at other things. But
that in itself is wisdom, because, you know, if you've gone to the effort of growing something without actually appraising the market that you're going to be selling into, you know, you might be stuck with not being able to compete with the big boys' prices, and that's not where you want to be.
Well, that is the case anyway. I think there's not much money in veg, and I have to be very clear about that. Like, what we do here is grow a lot of veg for ourselves, and that's what I was moving on to there. Is that potatoes? We're not selling those potatoes.
No.
They're going into our lunch, and we eat those along with our volunteers and our experienced people that come here. And then there are things that go out to market that can make a bit of money. Kale's one of them, but you know, there's quite a lot of holes in my kale right now, even though I've protected them from the butterflies. The flea beetles have been in there and made some holes. Going to be hard to sell them. Beetroot's easy to sell, but it's not going to get you any money. £1.25 a kilo.
Slow growing.
So that whole row there might be 50-60 kilos. You're only looking at 50-60 pounds worth, you know, of veg there. You know, that's taken your bed up for the whole of the spring there. But we do a lot of successional planting. So as soon as these beetroot come in, the beetroot come out, you can put the leek in, and things that are going to go right through into the winter, into the autumn and the winter. We can put in some brassica that are going to overwinter, you know, some of the cabbages and kales and things that.
So I think that, like, you know, although, like you say, a big part of it is observe and learn as you go, it's also really important that you sit and you plan your seasons. You know, you don't want to go into a season without at least an idea of what you're doing and plant willy-nilly. You want to know roughly what you might like to sell. You want to know how much space you've got to work with, and you want to know how long each thing has to be in the ground. Because, you know, for a guy like you, it's second nature. You've been doing it a long time. But for somebody who's just starting, it could be an easy way to slip up.
Absolutely. I think I don't do a huge amount of planning, I have to be honest. I think it becomes intuition. So you learn from the observation, and it becomes second nature of when to start stuff and what your market is and what you're able to sell. And that's very important before you start putting in loads of plants. Is where am I going to sell these plants? You know, like
I mean, it's a business.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the end of the day, you know, permaculture is a great thing, and that's how you choose to do it. But ultimately, you know, the essence of permaculture is sustainability, and the business must also sustain itself in order to be able to sustain the project. You know, it's not the case that it has to be non-profit in order to be environmentally friendly. And I think that like the dream is where somewhere in the middle where you can align the both.
Yeah, so let's move on to the other plot then and show you sort of how the economics work, because this, you know, there isn't much money here. This is a demonstration of what you can grow in a no-dig method, you know, and we've got a little bit of a market for some of this stuff.
Yeah.
But let's sort of show you how we make it work.
I was going to say, yeah, you've got some really impressive bits over there.
Yeah, so, yeah, let's go and have a look over there.
All right, brilliant, mate.
Okay.
So we've talked a lot about biodiversity, but for any new business, diversity of economics is also a big thing. You know, as you alluded to over there, sometimes you can get tied up, make mistakes, and not actually create enough of a living off of a single veg patch. So, I mean, as we can see, you've been doing other bits and bobs as well, and it's seriously impressive. What stage were you at in your journey when you kind of thought, right, we need to mix things up here and try something else? And how did you kind of go A to Z in deciding which would be most suitable for your space?
Yeah, well, excellent. Well, so like right before lockdown, we decided on this Rebel Farmer. Rebel Farmer for me,
love it. By the way,
was just like, it summed it up. I was speaking to my wife. I can't even exactly tell you what it. But it was, yeah, I said the words Rebel Farmer and she said, that's it, that's you. And I said, oh yeah, I suppose it is, not, you know. And so we put together this idea around what I was doing and how to turn that into a brand and a business. And then when lockdown came in, we created what was isolation glamping here at the Willows. So we bought this beautiful teepee, 21-foot teepee, to be able to provide a safe haven for people of London to come out, reground themselves after being in isolation and lockdown for so long. So that when it opened up in that first July, I think it was, and we were inundated. So it was fully booked that first year, and this really opened up the idea and the economics around glamping, sort of helping subsidise and create Rebel Farmer as we are sort of today.
And also provide you a platform for educating those who come here.
Very
you know,
much, yeah.
The whole idea of this for you wasn't just somewhere to make veg and sell veg, it was to create a culture change in a way. And by bringing people to the farm, you get the opportunity to, in your very convincing way, tell them all about how great permaculture is. So it's a real good platform for you.
That's it. That gave me all the sort of training I needed to sort of learn how to take people on a tour and to explain my story and what we were doing here.
Yeah.
So everyone that came, I gave them that walk around the plot, some of the things that you've just seen, impressed them all and got some good feedback. You know, it makes you feel good, and it's really sort of learning how to tell that story, because it's, you know, that's how we get that social change aspect across.
Exactly.
So that sort of continued. We bought a bell tent in the second year. The first year we had this marquee set up the top here, and it blew away in the wind. That's where our kitchen was, you know, for the glamping. So that wasn't great. And thinking about the second year of glamping, we basically thought, well, we need a bit more of a solid structure. I also need to expand on the amount of tomatoes I grow, because I was doing quite well with that. So we bought this new Polytunnel. So should we go and have a quick look
That's
over
it,
there?
definitely. I mean, that's exactly it. You know, it's like, when's the right time to buy a Polytunnel? Well, it's when it feels right. It's when the business tells you there's a need for it.
Absolutely.
And you know, you touched it there. Your old structure blew away. Right, we need something safe for these guys to come visit.
Well,
so I mean, look at it. Unbelievable, isn't it?
Basically, yeah, this has really come together since the beginning of last year. We linked in with some people with the Kent Downs AOMB, who were trying to create year-round experiences here in Kent. So the Polytunnel we paid for, but this table was part funded.
I mean, this is unbelievable.
Yeah, this is a local piece of oak from Kingswood, just up the road.
That's it.
Built by local people, and it was all about finding a location and you know, centerpiece for the experience idea. So we bring in that whole idea of showing people what's going on here. Is we need a table to facilitate eating experiences, potting on, starting seeds, and discussions around localized food systems. But we also wanted to grow some more tomatoes. So,
and look, there's nobody's, well, someone has probably said it, but there's no reason why you can't grow a hell of a lot of veg in the same space you live, no matter where you are, and you're doing it here again.
Well, this is the idea of putting the food in the place where you
Eat the food.
and
There's nothing closer.
That's it. So we're you know, 0 food miles is you know
You're almost 0 food meters.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. We're looking at food meters here, and this is a lovely, exciting time of the year here in July, where we've got lots of tomatoes to show you. There are actually 35 varieties in here. I'm working with tomatorevolution.co.uk to sort of really look at all of these beautiful heirlooms.
Gorgeous.
So they're just starting to ripen up now. There's quite a lot of work involved here in side shooting in here, but we have an automatic irrigation system, and we just use these old bale twine, you know, a little bit of reclamage to help us support these plants. And you just wrap them up around this line here to keep them supported, you know.
Beautiful.
We've got some pretty large cucumbers.
It smells wonderful in here as well.
Yeah, you just need to touch. If you just touch the vines, you can really just get that smell. But I've also got coriander that's happened to come up in here as well.
You like your rogue corianders, I noticed.
I do like a rogue coriander. They're
the rebel
beautiful.
coriander.
Yeah, the flowers actually taste different to what coriander leaf would taste like, and those little seeds. Obviously, you know what seeds the coriander seed tastes like.
Yeah.
But when they're green,
Potent.
they're pretty cool as well.
Amazing.
Yeah, so
God.
yeah,
So as we can see, you know, like every journey has rocks and problems, and anyone who says that farmers aren't resilient people doesn't know a farmer, because your journey isn't going to be easy, and there's always going to be hurdles to overcome. But through community and through sharing of knowledge, you will always find a solution. So the key thing is just to keep your mind open, keep your options open, and just try different things. You know, I'm sure you've tried other things that haven't worked out. But what I'd love to do now is go and look at something that's really doing the job for you. Right, well, here we are then. The beginning, the middle, and the end of the process.
Yes.
How do you compost? Why do you think it's so important? And where did you learn how to do it?
Oh gosh, yeah, well, I think again, a lot of observation has taught us how to do it, but I've learned a lot from Charles Dowding and his no-dig permaculture. You may well see that these are very much like Charles Dowding's compost bays.
Yeah, I thought I'd seen them before.
Yeah, we spent a fair bit of money on them because it's so important to have a decent compost system, a decent large stage. On this sort of scale, we need a decent amount.
How much do you go through in a place like this?
Well, that's it. You know, we're building that up. We want to use as much as possible. We want to create as much as possible. This is our microgreens waste that comes in. This is only 6 months of microgreen waste here. We'll use them at the end of the season.
Be pumped full of carbon with all these root networks in there.
Exactly. So you know, like compared to some people, you know, have sprouts in jars, don't they? And you get the whole root system and the pea and everything else when you eat those. We're putting the energy of the roots back into this compost system. This creates an abundance of lovely compost here that is fairly weed free. You see some of the amaranth comes through this system, but it's pretty good little system, this one.
Yeah, I noticed a couple of them sneaking their head in there.
We've got a couple of other systems over here. It's a bit of a mess over here at the moment, but that's what compost is like. And we're mixing brown and green waste. That's very important to mix the right quantities of both. So you need some dry material, sometimes some shredded cardboard or paper or chippings in there to help with the decomposition of the green material. And
oxygen.
The combination of both, and that creates a hot compost. We've got a thermometer here. It's nothing going too hot at the moment, but we check the temperature of the compost, and when the temperatures, it goes right up to about 60-70 degrees. When it starts coming back down again, it's time to turn it. Yeah. And then it gets the oxygen in, and you create this compost. But we're pretty much there with this one. This is all this year's compost, you know. And we're really sort of, you know.
Such a mixture of grade, material.
Yeah, that's it.
It's really a bit like you know, when it comes to composting, it's almost a little bit like looking after livestock, you know, because you need to monitor it. When it needs turning, it must be turned at that time. There's no waiting. You know, nobody should see compost as a dead, inert matter that plants go into. It is the heart and the life of any growing facility, so it needs to be treated as such, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, it is a living entity. I think we underestimate the power of soil and fungus in particular.
Thank you.
bringing it back to the man here. You know, it is so important to have fungus as part of your system there, and we're creating fungi rich compost here, and it's full of life. The microbes work with the fungus, and we create this beautiful living soil, which we then apply to the ground out there, and we're feeding the soil not only with nutrients, but we're also feeding it with, we're bringing those microbes into play, and that's what keeps the soil so healthy and keeps our veggies all abundant.
I mean, you can see the result. It's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah. So I think, Ed, just as a closing question, really, what do you wish that you knew then that you know now? If there was one key piece of advice, what would it be? I know it's a hard one because you've learned so much over the last few years.
Knowing when to rest.
Ah, brilliant.
Because really, I've burnt out a few times here, and mental well-being is very important in this sort of atmosphere, especially in the heat of summer. You need to know when to stop so you don't end up completely burnt out, because burnout can last, a week or two, and you can't afford a week or two in the middle of summer. In fact, instead of burning out, you need to find a summer holiday, and you need to make sure that you stop for a week or two during the summer when you think it's impossible. And this year, I've got the support of some volunteers to help me be able to do that, and that's been so important. Working with volunteers so that you have that support to be able to stop and get off the farm and refresh your mind and your body and your soul, really.
Well, it's a marathon, not a sprint, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're really just hoping that we can get that rest in this summer, so we can continue right into the autumn and get some veggies right into that winter time, that's it, so.
Brilliant. Well, Ed, Rebel Farmer, thank you so much, mate. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, really nice to meet you, mate.